Hello, everyone. I would like to discuss with you the issue of educational parenting. And who are parents? They're moms, dads, aunties, uncles, whoever spends a lot of time with that child, not just the school. And if you look at the thumbnail and wonder why it's regarding black education, that's because I don't know about parenting as a white parent, as I'm not a member of that community. So I'm just staying in my lane. Now, first of all, I come from a family of educators, people who in the 1950s had obtained masters and PhDs during a time when it was very, very unusual for a black person to do so. Aunt who got her master's at USC in the 1950s, an uncle who was a principal of a school pre-segregation and no, during segregation and during desegregation. Teaching was what they did. And so some of the things that were passed on through my family that produced very good results insofar as academics, I'd like to share that with you because it produced generations of avid readers and so on. And in this series, there's going to be another one, a couple of other videos about educational parenting. But the way it was passed on via these educators who were my family, including my mother. And I repeated what my mother told me she had done with me with my own child. So let's start early when they are just at the age where they're curious. You put a book down with all the pictures and you encourage them to turn the page and say, oh, look at here. They may only be a few months old, but they become enamored with turning that page and finding out what comes next. And as they get older, books retain an appeal for these young minds that are thirsty sponges for learning. Now, we have iPhones and iPads or whatever, but do not forsake the actual book for the computer. Because reading should be a activity that when you're focused on it, you can kick back. It's a separate activity. And you can unplug. That encourages the imagination. I hope that any parent of young children or grandmothers will not allow the computer to take the place of the book and quietly reading. Because everything is not going to be done by a computer. There will come a time when they'll have to take a test that is not on the computer, write an essay in the actual classroom without a computer. And I will tell you that initial beginning of providing them with a book to turn the pages, it has produced in me an avid reader, in my own child an avid reader. But it also increases comprehension skills and the ability to use your imagination and to think. We must get beyond the point where the computer does all the thinking for our children. The other thing that we do, or we did as a family, is that we would take trips to the library. And it was almost like a ceremony when they would get their first library card. And what a child sees is what a child does. So you as a parent need to be reading as well so that your child says, oh, mom or dad is reading. I'm going to be like mom and dad and I'm going to read. It's always good to have a library in your home of books that you enjoy, good books, reference books, and you need to teach your child how to look up words, not Google, but actually look them up. It got to the point where my own son would start reading the dictionary because he wanted to be prepared. Because every time he asked me what a word meant, I would say, look it up. The act of looking it up introduced him not only to that single word, but the words that came before it and the words that came after it, and all the different meanings of the word. Now, as I said, these are things that were passed on through my family of educators to me and I to my son. I was such an avid reader, I only wanted to read. We as a community need to encourage from the earliest possible age. We need to encourage our children to read. We need to encourage them to unplug. We need to encourage them to go to the library. The discipline of even having to return a book travels through life and discipline in other areas. Now, this is only the beginning, but this is at a very young age. Like I said, from 9 months to 2 years to 3 years old, before preschool. Get them interested in these sorts of activities. Reading, if it's just in the beginning, looking at pictures and you reading to them. Incorporate reading into their lives. And I'll give you another example. You know, when the systems go down and there is no Wi-Fi or there is no this or that, these children will not be bored. They will say, oh, the computer's down. I'm going to read a book. So educational parenting begins immediately. If it's your grandchild, if it's your child, if it's your niece or your nephew, a child that you come in contact with. Because we've seen where it's left up to the school what happens with that, especially with our children. No matter how bright they may be, they either get left behind or they're pushed ahead when they shouldn't be. So that's just my sharing with you all, with you young people, with young families, with you new grandparents, with new grandchildren. It's never too late to start, but please encourage them to read. There is a crisis in Black education, and we cannot rely upon the school system to provide everything. We, as their parents and guardians, need to engage in educational parenting, along with the other parenting we do, the moral parenting, teaching them to clean up the house and how to take care of their bodies. These are life lessons, and they start very young, but it is never too late to start. If you got a teenager, you can start with a teenager. They may not like it, but say, we're going to unplug right now. We're going to the library, and we're going to read right now. because believe me, they may resist, but later on in life, they will come back to it. I hope this has been helpful to some of you, to many of you, and that you will apply these techniques, because I can tell you they are very, very helpful to a growing child. And I'll give one last example. I had a book of Russian language in my home. I tried to take Russian for one semester, but I did not like the language, so I let that go. But I kept my Russian language book and my Berlitz language book, and my son had this curiosity about the Russian language. Fast forward to when he was in college, and he majored in political science with a minor in, guess what? Russian language. Because that seed had been planted, because that book was there. And he was so good at it that he got a scholarship to go to Russia as a summer exchange student. We as parents have to have this information where our children can see it, ask questions about it, planting seeds so that they will know that there is another world out there, a big world out there, full of miraculous and adventurous and interesting things. And it starts with turning the page of a book. Thanks. Bye-bye.